Be sure to subscribe for your chance to win a custom leather playmat when we hit 2,500 subscribers. Welcome to Fast Effect Double Speed Magic the Gathering from ELD's Time Vault Games in Bellingham, Mass. Playing live over Discord during this shutdown. We've got a Goblin Lackey, and Matt is not going to be on burn here. Perhaps this is going to be Storm. Let's see. A Thoughtseize off of a snow-covered swamp. Could be any number of things. Cavern of Souls making that Lackey uncounterable. Didn't seem relevant, but I mean, it seemed like it could be relevant. So far, we don't actually know if it was. I should say a swamp could be in a control deck. Could be in depths. Storm. Or Reanimator. We've got an Entomb. Grabbing an Elesh Norn, and that is going to be a big, big problem for Goblins. Clearing Goblin Lackey, making any future Goblins immediately dead. So perhaps Heather has a Caracas in there. We'll see what she has for an actual answer. It's like a 4/7 with Vigilance. That's just going to chip away over the next 5 turns. Without really anything able to stand in its way. Without some type of help. Now, if Matt gets another threat down, that'll almost certainly just be a scoop. And I wouldn't really anticipate it. If anything, Matt may just want to ride this out without giving away too much other information. I mean, a Gristlebrand's not really tipping your hand at all. But any other potential creatures could adjust Heather's sideboarding strategy. And we are on to the next game, as that was pretty much unwinnable once that Elesh Norn came down. You really are going to need, most likely Caracas is going to be the answer for most aggro decks. And that was a major thing when I have played Reanimator in the past, is figuring out the types of threats that are going to be non-legendary. It's pretty clear most of the best possible cards you could be putting in are in fact legends. You're talking about Gristlebrand, Iona, Elesh Norn, and there's a handful of others that are also legendary. And then you just kind of end up in a situation where you actually can't win through a Caracas, where they can just bounce your guy, and even if you get 2 guys out, they can bounce one and then untap and bounce another one. It's just totally undoable. To the point where I've actually run Caracas in many unconventional decks just as an answer against Reanimator. I've run it in Storm sideboard as well. Now there, it also really helps out a lot versus Thalia and Gaddock Teague. So Caracas is overall just a very strong magic card. I have to take a look at the original wording. I wonder if it's really should return things that are not creatures. I wonder if that's a form of errata. I know when Legends came out, the only type of legend was a creature. Legend was actually a creature type for a very long time. Now it's a super type, which creates some interesting rules interactions. Probably the most relevant ones right now in the format would be along with Oko, as if you have, for example, Mox Opals, and they start getting elked, they are still legendary elks. Makes it more difficult to amass a whole bunch. So Reanimator, a very powerful deck. Super explosive, and games 2 and 3 are going to be very different if it goes at all Heather's way, given that she'll have access to a bunch more graveyard hate, perhaps Fairy Macabre. Someone on the channel keeps telling me how to pronounce it. I've got the old Vincent Price British version in my head with the bruh at the end. We've got a Grafdigger's Cage coming down. So Heather does have a way of stopping the graveyard. Will Matt have an answer to that? Or will he perhaps sidestep it with a card like Show and Tell? I haven't seen that in a while. It's a very powerful effect. As a sideboard option, it's totally reasonable. There are a bunch of decks that you're actually going to be okay using Show and Tell against, and you don't have to sideboard it in when you're, playing against Omnitel or something. Now we have a Lackey and a Matron along with a Pithing Needle. So Heather's got a really nice curve here. She's going to be able to get out a Pithing Needle and a Lackey if it wasn't for this Thoughtseize. So Thoughtseize really doing its job there. Slowing things down. And now we've got a Rishadan Port tapping a Swamp during the upkeep. That Pithing Needle currently just chilling in hand. And was that a Hapless Researcher? Perhaps? I forget the name of that one. Let me know in the comments. Hapless Researcher comes to mind, but it's been a long time since I've seen this played in Legacy. He can sack to loot. Just draw a card and discard a card. And then we've got a Pithing Needle, which actually has not been used to stop the 1/1 wizard. So far, no Goblins on board, and now finally a Lackey and Port during the upkeep. Now this Lackey's not really going to get through very easily. Matron's going to need to find some type of help. But there's definitely help in there. Heather could go for a Ringleader, try and find even more. She can go find some removal like a Gem Palm Incinerator. Let's see what she does here. Oh, and she's got the Caracas. So this game going very, very well for Heather, despite having no Goblins. We'll see if Matt can find his way out, given that there's no pressure on him. I mean, he's got all day to find answers so far. Oh, it totally is Hapless Researcher. Well, there you go. Showing my age there. Back when that was a standard card. So Abrupt Decay has taken out the Grafdigger's Cage. These Hapless Researchers holding down the fort, stopping the Goblin Lackey. It's going to be a question of what does Matt have for non-legendary answers. Tidespout Tyrant's a fun one. There's some Archons that can make it very difficult for your opponent to win. Blazing Archon stopping the attack step. I guess while this is slowed down a little bit, go ahead, let me know in the comments what your favorite non-legendary reanimate targets are. Sire of Insanity is a spicy one. Everyone discarding their hands, especially when you get it out on the first turn. I mean, that is a devastating sequence. Though I have seen Death and Taxes beat that maybe the majority of the time that I've witnessed that match. Yeah, it might actually be. I've seen it multiple times where they just draw a land off the top and then a Swords to Plowshares off the top, and it's just devastating. So Muxus being found by Matron, and he's going to be able to be cast. And also, we've got additional synergy here with the Caracas to be able to pick him up and put him back down. So Heather threatening to really close this out pretty quickly. This is a old school kind of build here. We got Brainstorm, Hapless Researcher, Bug colors here. Most of the modern Reanimator decks have been black-red build. And this may have access to Force of Will as well as Thoughtseize, so able to fight on the stack, fight the cards in hand, and then also, of course, come up with pretty solid battlefield presence if you can resolve any of your reanimate effects. I am curious what the Pithing Needle is naming. I'm assuming Hapless Researcher, just because they haven't been used at all yet. You really only need one for the Matron. Oh, and that's a good Muxus right there. Muck is finding Slingang Lieutenant and a Goblin Pile Driver and then a Matron for good measure. Wow. What a incredibly powerful magic card. Actually just had a couple of those traded in. Jumpstart's still super difficult to get. I am not expecting a meaningful reprint. I mean, I hope I'm wrong, but I'm not expecting the floodgates to open before Christmas. Maybe sometime next year they'll have it sorted out. I would love to be selling that just by the box, blowing it out. But as it is, I mean, I think I have literally 5 or 6 boxes total in the store. I don't even think I put it on the website. It's just almost a non-factor. People are happy to come in and buy packs when they see them. They're delighted that they're actually in stock. So there's that. Now we've got a Pashalik Mons, which is threatening to just one-hit KO Matt, or perhaps combo, whichever metaphor works best. It's going to be a one-turn kill, as Slingang Lieutenant can literally just sack all of these goblins, and then Pashalik Mons is going to tack on extra damage as well. Yeah, Heather will need a little bit more goblins, but not much. And actually, she can just swing with everything first, or most things. Oh, and Matt actually turning his guys sideways. Getting in a little bit of extra damage and then sacking. So it looks like Pithing Needle did in fact name Gristlebrand, which is what you would expect. I am surprised that those Hapless Researchers stayed around as long as they did. However, Matt uses them to draw a couple of extra cards, and we are on to game number 3. So Heather has some defense in terms of Grafdigger's Cage. We saw Caracas, so even if Matt does manage to have a first turn legend, there is a very easy answer in Heather's list that is immune to Thoughtseize and could get peeled off the top of the deck anytime. Caracas is just incredibly solid at answering legendary creatures. I mean, there's nothing quite as good as that for this type of matchup. And as mentioned before, it's also pretty good versus those smaller legends like Thalia. Or the new Rick. I saw a list going 7 and 3 being put forward as evidence that he is playable. I mean, he may actually be playable in the sense that, like, Nick Fit is playable. So you can play it. Like, you can have fun. Like, there's nothing wrong with that, but it is not the top tier of the format. I mean, it's good enough to potentially win, like, can potentially win against anything, but day in and day out, you're not going to get the same type of results as you would with, say, something like Rug Delver or Storm or Eureka Tell. Even something like Allurn, I think, would put up, over time, much, much stronger results than humans with the forecasting cost Rick in there from The Walking Dead. But they did spoil the best one last, I'll give them that. Making everything in your deck a mini Batterskull is a consideration at 4 mana. We've got a Thoughtseize. Now we see Relic of Progenitus, Aether Vial. Got a Wasteland and a Port, along with Pashalik Mons. So we got to imagine the Relic gets taken here, and the coast is mostly clear. If Matt has more mana in his hand, he may be in pretty good shape. And it's going to be a question for Heather whether or not she uses that Wasteland on the first turn or commits to the Aether Vial. The longer you wait on Vial, the worse it is. Oh, wow. Matt actually taking the Vial. Very surprised here. Heather just going for it with a... Oh, no, she's going with her Relic. Looked like she was going to be sacrificing that land after tapping it. And we've got a Brainstorm for Matt. Likely accompanied by a fetch land. Best combo in the game. This Relic of Progenitus is a legitimate issue. Unless he's going to, like, ritual out a creature right now via, like, Entomb and Exhume or something. No, we've got a Ponder, so he's going to continue to dig. So Relic is going to mean Matt chooses the card to discard. A card to exile, sorry. And an Oko, well, that's a pivot. That is a significant pivot. And he doesn't even really need to worry about the Relic at this point. He can just start spitting out Elk. So Bug Reanimator with a real plot twist here. Pashalik Mons not really going to line up particularly well with a herd of elk. He is actually smaller than them. As are really all the goblins outside of Muckus. And as we saw in the last game, Heather's deck post-board has really been kind of adjusted to prevent the graveyard from becoming an active zone. A lightning bolt being tossed out in response to this Thoughtseize. And it's going to be a Matron or a Pashalik Mons. The Matron gets taken. I mean, Matron could be anything, even a Pashalik Mons. And we've got Oko ticking up. And it looks like the bolt went to the face. And I am actually not loving that response. Oko just makes bolts to the face feel so much worse, given that he can just erase that with a food. Now, Goblins doesn't really have the type of reach it does in, say, Old School, where you're running like Chain Lightnings, Lightning Bolts, Goblin Grenade. That deck can potentially reach out with a lethal blow when you're sitting around at like 12. The only way Goblins is going to do that is with Sling Gang Lieutenant and Pashalik Mons. It's more of a combo than just, you know, straight burn. We've got an Abrupt Decay, taking out the Pashalik Mons. And the Elk are turning sideways. So Heather had the answer for the graveyard, but not for this Oko. At this stage, she's probably going to need like a red Elemental Blast. Taking out the green source. Porting an Underground Sea. Elk beats just 2 turns left. Heather can be put down to 1 life on the next swing. This is not the swerve that a lot of people want to see, but it is a fascinating one to me. See Oko showing up here and completely sidestepping. We got Hapless Researcher representing lethal, even if these Elks are taken care of. And that is going to do it as a very interesting sidestep here from Matt. Going with that Oko, going old school with Reanimator to have the bug mana base. Gives you some options. That is all for this one, but don't worry, there is a lot more. You can check out our older videos, and we're always putting out new videos from ELD's Time Vault Games in Bellingham, Massachusetts. If you want to help the channel, of course, you can like, subscribe, share, tap that notification bell so you can know the next time our new videos come out. Thanks for watching.